Today, we're gonna take my Pocket 6K fully rigged out with all the different accessories and see if we can get it balanced on my gimbal and then get even more accessories on the gimbal itself for the ultimate filmmaking rig. I see a lot of people online talking about how they can get their Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K and 6K mounted on a gimbal and all balanced properly. Well, I think I have some ideas for how you can mount this on a gimbal without needing any counterweights or offset plates or anything like that. So I've got all these parts and pieces and accessories laid out on the table here, and we're gonna see what we need to make this all come together. Now, the first part of this equation is, of course, the camera itself, and I actually already have the cage on there. I'm using one from SmallRig. That's really my favorite because I really live in the SmallRig ecosystem. You could do this same thing with a Tilta cage though. First thing I'm gonna grab is the Samsung SSD T5. Everyone's really using this, nothing new here. Next, I'm gonna grab the power cable for the camera with the LEMO pin connection, and then it goes to D-tap, because honestly, we're gonna run this entire rig off of a V-mount battery if we can. Let's grab a full-size to full-size HDMI cable. Next, we're gonna grab the lens, and I'm gonna be using the Ronin Cine DS 24mm lens for this, and it's a fully manual lens, which I prefer to use when I can. Since I'm using fully manual lenses, I still have to be able to pull focus because obviously I can't reach around and adjust the focus while I'm holding the gimbal with both my hands. That's just not gonna work. So I'm using a wireless follow focus, and this is the Tilta Nucleus Nano. And it comes with obviously the motor and the focus wheel, and then a couple different pieces to get it all mounted. So we're actually gonna mount this to the top of my cage upside down to help kind of counterbalance the weight here instead of having more weight on this side where the SSD is, making it way more difficult to balance on a gimbal. So I'm going to take it and actually go right into the 1/4 thread here on the top of the cage. All right, once that piece is tightened, then I'm just going to take the motor, slide it right on, and then drop it into place to make sure that these gears here line up nice, and tighten it. Now that the focus motor is all set up, let's get the quick release plate on the bottom of the cage. And this is where a little bit of that offsetting comes into play. So a lot of people use offset plates or counterweights to mount the Blackmagic cameras. I found that I have no reason to actually do that because there are a ton of threads on the bottom of the cage. There's a whole bunch of 1/4 threads down here, so I can offset it myself just by using the cage. So what I'm gonna do is go to the far right hole in the very back, and that is where I'm going to mount the quick release plate. That allows me to pretty much offset this weight as much as possible, so it will balance a lot easier on the gimbal. Now I'm gonna grab the gimbal that I'm actually gonna be using, and that is the FeiyuTech AK4000. And I really like this gimbal because it works completely as a single grip, or it builds out into this entire ring. Now, if you're using something like the Ronin S or the Crane 2, the Moza Air, a whole bunch of those have different accessories that allow you to add dual grips with a bunch of spots for mounting or put a ring around them. So I'm gonna slide the camera onto the gimbal now. I'm gonna try and power the camera and as many other accessories as possible, all off of one V-mount battery. What I gotta do to actually get this V-mount battery mounted onto this gimbal is we need to add a little V-mount adapter. So I bought this one online, and I'll leave links to all these little parts and pieces down in the description below, but this is just a little V-mount adapter and a clamp, and it definitely comes in clutch when you need it. So I'm gonna throw that up here on the side so it still gives us space to mount things over here. And then slide the battery on. The V-mount battery only has one D-tap out, and that's not gonna work for me because we have a whole bunch of accessories that we need to power. So I've grabbed this 4-port D-tap splitter, and I'm just gonna get it plugged into the side of the battery here. And then we're gonna get this secured to the gimbal itself so we can plug a bunch of things into it. And I'm just gonna use a bongo tie because it's temporary and it's just a quick way to get this on the rig. Now that we have the power supply set up, let's first get the camera plugged into it. So grabbing the D-tap cable from the camera, and then I'm just gonna plug it in up here. Now let's get a monitor set up because I want something that allows me to see the image right in front of my eye line instead of having to look down at the camera. I've grabbed my Atomos Ninja V, and we're using this one in particular because of a couple reasons. One, it's one of the brighter ones with 1000 nits, and we actually don't need the ProRes out of it because the Blackmagic cameras film ProRes internally and B-RAW, so I'm not really using it for that. So I'm gonna use this little cold shoe mount adapter with a 1/4-20 on top to get the monitor on there. And the nice thing about this is I feel weird like talking through the gimbal, but it kind of covers my whole face. It's huge. The nice thing anyways are that there are 2 cold shoe mounts on the top of this gimbal already. So put it on the left side here, and then we're gonna get the monitor mounted up there. Now let's get the HDMI cable plugged into it here. Now on this other mount up here, we're going to put the wireless transmitter that I was talking about earlier. This is the Hollyland Cosmos 600, and I really like this one. And we're gonna use another 1/4-20" little cold shoe mount adapter. So I'm gonna thread that to the bottom of the transmitter here. So I tilted the camera up a little bit so you guys can actually see the top of the monitor here. You're seeing my hair light now, but who really cares? All right, so let's get the transmitter on. Let's actually get the HDMI cable going into it. So we're gonna go from HDMI out on the Ninja V and then run that over to the transmitter for our HDMI in. I always try to do as much cable management as possible to keep things from snagging and just being loose everywhere. So I grabbed this simple little bread tie and just gonna wrap this HDMI cable up just a little bit. The rig is coming along really nicely, and we've got a whole bunch of things on it already, but there's still a lot of stuff that we actually need to add to it. So stick with me here. Let's keep going. Now let's add the follow focus wheel from the Nucleus Nano. I have another little clamp, and then I have the actual little adapter that comes with the Nucleus Nano for mounting it. So I've attached that to the top here on a 1/4-20 thread on top of this clamp. So now that that's put together, I'm going to actually slide the focus wheel right into place and lock it. Honestly, there's not a great place to put this focus wheel on the gimbal because it's a 2-handed grip. And so usually both your hands are on it, whereas when you're using a single grip, you can have one hand on the grip and the other hand pulling focus. I'm actually gonna mount this on the inside of the gimbal here. You can see how I could still spin it with my thumb. And so it's not great, but it still gives me the ability while I'm holding it with 2 hands to kind of spin it a little bit. But this is really a spot where a dedicated focus puller is gonna come in handy. I'm gonna grab this D-tap cable to micro USB and actually plug it into the motor. And then we'll run it up to that D-tap splitter, get it plugged in. The next big thing that I want to add to this gimbal is a matte box, and I'm using this new one from Polar Pro called the Basecamp, and it is absolutely awesome. I've actually already made an entire video about it already. If you guys want to check it out, I'll link it up above in the card. Super lightweight, perfect for using on gimbals, and it's modular, so it breaks apart so that you can get even smaller with it. So I'm going to break this down to be just a little bit smaller. This is actually a variable ND filter, so it's 2 circular polarizers combined. We've got this one, and then I have another one inside that will spin. The beautiful thing about that is I don't have to switch out a bunch of different ND filters when I'm running around with the gimbal. I can just use really this one with the circular polarizer to get the perfect exposure. We're gonna get this mounted with the clamp mount. So I really like that because it just attaches right to the front of the lens itself. So I'm using a 77mm thread to mount on the front. Now that we have the clamp on the front of the lens, we can actually get the ND filter little matte box portion here clamped on. I'm gonna get this thing all balanced now because these are the last little bits that I've put on the camera. As you can see, this thing is just completely decked out with cables going everywhere and the motor and the SSD and the cage. It's a beast. To get this to balance, because the motor is up front and this little matte box, it's pretty heavy front balanced. So before I had said that you should put the quick release plate all the way in the back, well, it was just way too front heavy. So what I've done is actually move it all forward 1/4 20 thread so that it would allow this camera to slide back even further to counterweight this front heavy part. Let's get this bad boy finally turned on. You've seen me put so much together here, and there's actually still more to come. I know you guys are shocked. What? How can there possibly be more, Chad? You've done so much ridiculous stuff to this rig. Yeah, there's a little more. Boom, look at that. Balanced, ready to rock. Woo! So I know that a lot of you guys like to use microphones on your gimbals, and honestly, I'm just not a huge fan of using onboard shotgun microphones because I never use that audio. Usually I have someone mic'd up with a lavalier or with a boom microphone to really capture nice audio, because this, you're just gonna be too far away from the talent to really get good audio. But if you're someone that has to use it, you can of course mount this on the gimbal as well. I'm gonna put this cold shoe mount on the top here. And of course, this cable is just way too short to actually make it to the camera, so I gotta grab an extension cable for this real quick. I'm gonna plug in the microphone and then actually plug it into the side of the camera here. This thing is pretty heavy. Both of these accessories on the top use NPF batteries. Now, these NPF batteries from Sony can get pretty heavy. Because we have that D-tap splitter on top, we can actually plug everything in. So what I've got here is a Sony NPF adapter to D-tap. So I'm gonna put this one on the back of the Ninja V and then plug it right into the D-tap port up here up top. Let's get the transmitter powered up, and this D-tap cable to LEMO pin connector actually came with the Cosmo 600, so I'm gonna get this plugged into the transmitter and then bring this over to the D-tap here. This thing is fully rigged out now. Look at this beast. Obviously, this thing is massive and a little bit over the top and ridiculous, just fully maxed out rig. But if you need something really professional on set, this will definitely do the job. Guys, if you want to see more videos like this with camera rig builds and lighting, editing, everything like that, hit subscribe right now because I have a ton more videos coming out on all that and you don't want to miss any of it. And oh yeah, go check out the new filmmaking merch. We've got an alien flying a drone. How sweet is that? Must have just escaped Area 51. Yeah, the meme lives on and you can wear it. It's coming out of like The Shining or something. Here comes Johnny!